How's it going? My name is Bradley with Allaqcess Sports, bringing you a brand new video, our Fantasy 5, where we're going to talk about 5 players at the running back position that you should probably be looking into for your Draftkings lineup. Now, you can also take this for Underdog, Fanduel, Drafters, whatever normal fantasy football you're playing. You can take some of this information and utilize it there. So even though it is for Draftkings, that's not the only place this information will be valuable. All of these running backs are going to kind of be at different price points. That way we can get an overall look at the running back position as a whole. Now, obviously, these are not set in stone. Potentially, injuries, unfortunately, will happen prior to the game. News will come out. Depth charts might change. Some trades or some signings might happen. There's still some really big free agents out there, so you never know what's going to happen. But as of right now, September 1st, here's kind of where we stand. Kicking things off for players that I absolutely love week 1 against my Carolina Panthers would be Bijan Robinson at $8,000. Now, the Carolina Panthers were terrible against the run last year. The Atlanta Falcons, one of the best offensive lines and one of the teams that rushes the ball more than anybody else. It's a matchup made in heaven for him. There are a couple of concerns here because if you want to pay attention to the depth charts and Bijan Robinson is still listed as number 3, well, then that's going to be a problem. We obviously won't be playing it if that scenario is true. And maybe you think, Bradley, new defensive coordinator in the Carolinas. It's Ejiro Evero, fantastic defense in Denver. Well, take a closer look at the numbers. The Denver Broncos were very good against the pass. They weren't very good against the run. Playing in that 3-4 style defense with some smaller guys up front, that offensive line is going to be able to put in work. So if Bijan Robinson is going to be the workhorse that we think he's going to be, he's going to have a big game. Now, if there's reports out there that he's going to be splitting time 50-50, you can probably find some better value than an $8,000 guy who's going to be splitting carries. He's going to be the main runner, we all assume, but you never know what's going to happen. A little bit of a price cut. We're going to be looking at Joe Mixon at $6,800 against the Cleveland Browns. Again, he's getting up there in age, but he's going to be the number 1 back. Samaje Perine, no longer in Cincinnati. Chase Brown and Chris Evans are going to be his main backups. There's been a couple of injuries. They haven't looked great in the preseason. Joe Mixon will be that dude who runs behind the line. He's getting up there. He's not going to be tremendous volume, but if you're going to get 20 points out of a running back this week, I think Joe Mixon has to be in consideration for one of those guys. There's obviously going to be a lot of attention paid to the receivers out wide with Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd. The one thing that you can trust is they're going to protect Joe Burrow, who's dealing with a little bit of a calf injury. What's the easiest way to keep him healthy? Just hand the ball off. Turn around, hand it off to Joe Mixon. Let him do what he needs to do. You should still be able to do enough to win this game. Joe Mixon, $6,800. Again, I think he has a 20-point game in him here. And if I'm getting 3 to 4 times his value, I'm happy because that means I'm in line for a 200-point week. He's a threat in the receiving game as well. Currently on Vivid Picks, if you play there. If not, sign up with my link down in the description. But Vivid Picks currently has his over-under for receiving and rushing yards at 75.5 yards, including 25 receiving yards. That's probably good for 3 or 4 targets in this game. PPR is king. Joe Mixon kind of gives you it all. Now, we don't have to go too much farther down to find J.K. Dobbins, the next guy we're going to be talking about. Again, I like a lot of these guys up higher on the list. These are just 5 guys that I'm paying attention to that I might be putting in my lineups, whether it's a good value or I don't think the rest of the nation is going to be playing them. You need to look to be a little bit different if you want to win the big prize. Yes, J.K. Dobbins was coming off an injury last year. He did look a little sluggish when he first got introduced, and then things started to ramp up and speed up. But Bradley, they have a new offensive coordinator in Baltimore. He wants to throw the ball. He wants to go a fast-paced offense. That's fine. You still need a rushing attack out there. The threat of J.K. Dobbins is still there. And now I know every game isn't a direct replication of the previous game, but J.K. Dobbins, if you're looking at his average, I would think 13 carries for 62 yards, pretty average for him. 5 targets, higher than normal. 43 yards, pretty high. 1 touchdown. That's a 20-point game. At $6,600, I'm looking at 6, 12, 18 to 24 points to get 3 or 4 times my value. J.K. Dobbins, when he is catching the ball out of the backfield in this new pass-heavy offense, that's a pretty good day, seeing that it was his lowest or second lowest offensive output in terms of rushing yards. I think J.K. Dobbins is a fantastic play going up against Houston. The Texans dead last in Draftkings points giving up to running backs last year. Yes, dead last. Sure, they added Will Anderson. Yes, they added D'Amico Ryans as a head coach. But how long do you really think it's going to instill his defensive style for them to slow down the run? Do you really think the Houston Texans are going to keep up with the Baltimore Ravens offensively, or are they going to get ahead in the first half? Take it easy on your prized possession back there, Lamar Jackson, and just run the ball and run the clock out. I think J.K. Dobbins has a high-volume day this time. $6,600, I absolutely love him at this price, and it's going to save me a fortune. You don't really have to save a whole lot week one because the pricing was done so long ago, and some starting wide receivers are $4,000. But J.K. at $6,600 against the Houston Texans, there's nothing to hate about this play. Our fourth play from our Fantastic Five on Allaqcess Sports that we're going to talk about is someone that you are hearing a lot of, so this isn't going to be something that's going to take a lot of people by surprise, but it's still a good, solid play for those of you playing 50-50s and double-ups. It's talking about Raheem Mostert from the Miami Dolphins. Yes, he's getting up there in age. I believe he's 31 years old. Yes, they drafted Allaqcess. There's a lot of things that could be working against him, but you're going up against the LA Chargers, who are going to be fearing Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, which will hopefully open things up for Raheem Mostert. He's going to be running back 1A. Allaqcess has been dealing with a little bit of a shoulder injury all year. Jeff Wilson Jr. was just announced that he's going to be out for the first 4 weeks by being put on the PUP list. So I think Raheem Mostert's going to be a little bit of a higher volume guy. Not tremendous volume, but again, at $5,000, if we're getting 15 points, I'm going to be happy with that, coming from a guy that averaged 11 points per game last year. Raheem Mostert is bolstered by the fact that he does catch the ball out of the backfield with 2.8211. Not a tremendous amount of volume, 71-29. Again, not huge numbers, but he does have a 23 and a 19-point game in him. Your floor, 8-5, not great. But if I'm only going to get burned on a guy that's $5,000 and get an 8-point game out of him, I don't hate myself, but that's a tremendous amount of upside and a decent floor for Raheem Mostert at $5,400. Doesn't it feel like the Miami Dolphins or the LA Chargers are always in these screwy games that just put up a ton of points? Them with Seattle and the Detroit Lions? I can see that happening here. I feel like this is going to be a higher scoring game than people anticipate. And lastly, I've been talking about this guy all off season. You've seen the TikTok videos where it's like 60 seconds long and they're like, before I tell you, just tell me who it is. It's Khalil Herbert. He's now getting running back 1 duties with David Montgomery gone. Do I love Roschon Johnson? Absolutely. I think he's a fantastic passing down back. Is he running back 1 right off the rip? No. What about Deonta Foreman, my Carolina Panthers boy from last season? He's good, but he's not Khalil Herbert. Bears fans will tell you there's a really strong love-hate relationship with Khalil Herbert. And if you just want to look at the numbers, there's more to love than to hate. Even though the Bears were arguably one of the worst, if not the worst team in the league last year, they did have some bright spots, and it did come with the running game in terms of attempts and yardage per game. Now, most of that's due to the fact that Justin Fields was able to scramble because he's running for his life the entire time because their offensive line was less than stellar. But Khalil Herbert should be able to find some room out of the backfield, and we obviously saw in the preseason what kind of a passing threat he is while he scampered for, I believe, a 75-yard touchdown. The numbers aren't great for him out of the gate, but if you're looking for a surprise play and you're trying to save some money at $5,300, you are getting a starting running back on a high-volume rush attack going up against the Green Bay Packers. It's a Green Bay rushing attack that gave up 139 yards per game and 18 touchdowns on the season. I'm fine with taking a team that's giving up a rushing touchdown a game when you have that good of a rushing attack. Give me Khalil Herbert at $5,300 to be a stellar play. Those are your Fantasy 5, but we got to give you 2 more honorable mentions because people are going to say, Bradley, no, I don't really like any of those guys. That's fine. You want to pay up? Austin Eckler's your guy. Pay up for him going up against the Miami Dolphins. Austin Eckler, season-long RB1 in my book. I'm drafting him everywhere I can in those best ball tournaments. I think Austin Eckler gets off to a hot start with so many wideouts spread out. Austin Eckler is going to have a massive season. Austin Eckler has high expectations for himself. There's no reason you should be doubting that. Finally, Antonio Gibson, $5,200. If you've been watching the preseason, Eric Bieniemy says he's a monster all over the field, which is kind of weird to say because last year we were like, get rid of Antonio Gibson, bring on Brian Robinson, and now this year it's like, Brian Robinson who? Antonio Gibson's the guy. Don't know what to make of that situation. It'll be interesting to see how it plays out. It could be worth the risk going up against, I guess, is the worst team in the league this year, the Arizona Cardinals. We all agree they're just tanking for Caleb Williams or Drake May, right? Like it's a hunt. Like you saw the promo video. You saw that coach. Would you even want to run through a paper wall for that man? So Antonio Gibson at $5,200 I think is a really good play. Sam Howell going to be one of the earlier starts in his career. Ease him into the season, take care of business against the Cardinals, and just turn around, hand the ball off to Bijan Robinson and Antonio Gibson at $5,200, or Bijan Robinson just a little bit cheaper. Sure, good play, $5,100. Personally, I would lean Antonio Gibson right now. One player to avoid. And before I get to that, make sure you give a thumbs up to the video, like this video, subscribe to the channel so you never miss another video. We're going to be doing wide receivers. We're going to be doing quarterbacks in place of the sleepers, studs, and stacks that you've seen in the years past. But we're still doing our starting five over on Patreon. If you want to see my foundation five that we're going to be doing, where I give you typically a quarterback, a running back, 2 wide receivers, and a flex, a tight end, or a defense, something along those lines. I'll give you about 5 players that I really want to focus in on my lineups. We'll put that over on Patreon. That's down in the description below. But the one player you should absolutely avoid this week is Jonathan Taylor. He's out. So stupid. I appreciate you watching. Thank you so much. I know there's a million things you could be doing today, and you chose to spend a couple of minutes with me. So for that, I thank you dearly. Hopefully the next time that I see you is down in the comments section and in the green.